Okay, so the debate topic, presumably speaking, are presumably simply whether it is the case that eating animals or killing animals is immoral or moral, right? So you take the position that veganism is the I guess is the moral position, is the more moral position, or it is moral obligatory to be a vegan, correct?
Yeah, I think we have reasons to be vegan.
By reasons, so what do you mean there? Like you just say like, because reasons is a very vague predicate or term, right? So like I can grant that maybe you have some sort of reason to be a vegan, but reasons in what specific sense? Reasons insofar as it is obligatory to not eat animals, or like what?
Yeah, typically
Okay.
obligations not to eat animals, but I do want to be clear. I think there's
Hmm.
also like pragmatic concerns to the point where I don't know if like mandating that you should not eat meat is going to fall under veganism. It kind of depends on the definition that you're using. But the one that I typically defend is just that we should give animals more consideration, and
Of course.
with that we have reasons, just reasons that count in
Okay.
favor of not pushing their slaughter.
So would you say that it is the case, and I just want to clarify this one more time, even though you've said this previously, that we ought to not be non-vegans or we ought not to kill animals?
No, I'm just saying that we have obligations to not eat animals. Like there could be
So
other
hold on.
considerations.
Mhm.
There could be other considerations that would like imply you to like purchase meat, but I'm really just defending the view that animals have more consideration to the point where it gives us some reason not to purchase their meat.
Okay, so you're not saying that it is obligatory to be a vegan. All you're just saying there's that we have some reason to assign what is called moral consideration to animal.
Yeah, based on the definition of veganism.
Okay, so what makes you believe this? Like, what's the evidence for this proposition?
Well, the evidence is just going to be the things that constitute moral consideration. It would just typically like an agent's preferences or desires.
So, what do you take moral consideration to be, definitionally speaking?
Consideration is just some sort of valuation, and then by moral I'm just talking about something conducive towards like an end. Like I'm kind of like a strong subjectivist about morality.
Wait, hold on there a second. So, you're saying the definition of morality is the type of thing, or the definition of moral is the type of thing which is conducive to an end, and you
Yeah,
claim the
typically a
subjectivist
cognitive friend.
about. But
Yeah,
it seems as if
typically.
you're laying out a metaphysical profile or your metaphysical profile of what you believe ethics to be or what you believe the nature of morals to be, and not necessarily the semantical content of that specific predicate, right?
Well, I'm not sure if those things are like mutually exclusive. So when I give like the semantic content and conditions for something to be
Uh-huh.
moral, do you not interpret that as me describing some sort of metaphysics about morality?
I'm saying that I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive. I'm saying that generally speaking, a metaphysical view on a specific object is going to be distinct from what that object is semantically speaking.
Okay, well, don't you think that when I give you semantics of it, you can identify the metaphysical nature of those semantics and then deem like the concept or the term to be, to have some sort of like metaphysical commitments to it
I
based on
don't
the
think
semantic.
semantics is a sufficient condition for determining the metaphysical profile we ought to have in perspective of or in perspective towards an object and vice versa.
Okay, so like I guess when I look at an object, and I have a term for that object, there's certain
Mm-hmm.
conditions and this is just really basic, so I apologize for the ramble, but yeah, there's certain
Uh-huh.
conditions for something to be categorized as that object. Now, if it's the case that you have an understanding of the metaphysics of those conditions,
Uh-huh.
I feel like it just like analytically implies that you have an understanding of the metaphysics of the concept because again, it's going to be more tautological if we apply a
Analytically
metaphysical
imply? What do you
predicate.
mean by analytic implication here?
By analytic implication, I'm saying that you can look at the metaphysics of one thing, and once you just
Yes.
have a tautological expression of that, you're not changing anything metaphysically, because when you give a tautological expression, there's no synthetic alterations to it.
So what you're saying here simply, just to summarize everything, right? All you're saying here simply that understanding the metaphysics of an object is going to be a good reason to believe that one has some sort of semantical background as it pertains to that object.
No, it was the inverse.
Was the inverse. So having a semantical background of an object implies one having a metaphysical understanding or metaphysical, I could say, view of what that object actually is, correct?
Yeah, if it's the case that you understand the metaphysics of the semantic
Are you saying
conditions.
it's logically implied or are you saying it's materially implied?
Earlier, I said it was analytically implied, so I'm just going to say it's
It's a
logically
logical
implied.
implication. So wait,
Yeah.
hold on there a second. So what's the contradiction in someone having a semantical background of a specific object without having a metaphysical perspective of what that object actually is?
No, there is a conditional. It's not just the case that you have a semantic background, it's that you have metaphysical understanding of the semantic conditions. And so
Wait, hold on.
I can give a
When I
logical
laid out
argument.
my interpretation initially, you said that it was the inverse, and the inverse simply being that having a semantical background, having some semantical content of a given predicate is going to be something which logically implies that you have a metaphysical view on that object. So presumably, you would say that if it is the case that you have a definition of an object X, then you have a firm metaphysical stance of what that object actually is. So that
No,
would bring me towards asking you the question about a logical contradiction, which it seems as if you're not holding the position that there's some logical contradiction developed from you holding the semantical content of an object without having a metaphysical perspective or stance of that object specifically.
no. This is like the second time I have to clarify this. You're missing out on a conditional that I had for the semantic conditions. I'm saying that
Okay.
if you have the semantic conditions for an object and you know the metaphysical nature of those semantic conditions, then tautologically you understand the metaphysical conditions or predicate about the given object because you're making a tautological expression. And when we have metaphysical alterations, those are
Okay.
necessarily synthetic, not analytic.
Okay, so it is not the case. So it is not the case that having the semantical content of an object implies, logically speaking, that there's a metaphysical perspective you have of that object. But it is the case that having a semantical and a metaphysical perspective of the object would necessitate you having a metaphysical perspective. Cool. That's not something which is disagreeable. However, when I did in fact lay out the position or my interpretation to be the former, you agreed with that, which would commit you to having to show like a contradiction. But you're not holding that position, which is fine. So we're just going to go back to what I asked you previously, which is the definitional part, right? It seems as if you're just given the definition, right? That's the only thing you're given, right? A definition, and not just like your metaphysical perspective. Or rather, if you're given both, it seems as if it would not be properly responding to my question because I'm just asking for one of these things.
Yeah, so just be clear, I was not very clear on your question. I didn't know if you're asking for like a semantic reduction or if you're asking for just like
But I
metaphysical
said, what does
predicate.
it mean to be
Well,
moral?
just wait. I'm just gonna like
Hmm.
kind of ramble for a second. So I wasn't clear on your question, and when I gave my semantic reduction of my understanding of morality, you responded by saying, "Well, that doesn't inform you." And correct me if I'm wrong, but you responded by saying that doesn't tell you much about the metaphysics, which seemed to be unsatisfactory. And so my response to that was like saying,
I would
"Okay,
say the
well,
opposite,
given."
actually. I
Sorry, what
wasn't
was that?
saying that it doesn't inform me of the metaphysics. In fact, I was saying that it seems as if it is just predominantly informing me of the metaphysics. And generally speaking, when someone is given a metaphysical perspective or view on a specific object, given my experiences at the very least, that's not the type of thing which captures the semantic content of the predicate that's being talked about. So I was wondering if you actually tracked my question or something like that, or like you tried the question, but you gave like an irrelevant response, or you did not try the question, which is what caused you to give a response, which is mainly into the domain of metaphysics rather than your definition of what that thing actually is.
Okay, so it seems
Mhm.
like the crux of our misunderstanding might be deeper than I thought. So when you asked
Mhm.
me like what morality is, and then I responded by telling you, "Oh,
No, I said,
morality
what
is
does it
something
mean
that."
to be moral? I said, what does it mean for something to be a moral consideration? Then you said you initially defined what a consideration actually is, which is something which is based on or predicated on evaluation assessments or something like that. And then you went into the semantics of what it means for something to be moral. So if anything, given how the conversation started and how you initially started defining each word of the terminology, you were actually trying to capture the semantical details of each specific word.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so once I gave you the semantics of consideration, then I proceeded to say something is moral if X, Y, Z, and then you already
Mm-hmm.
understand X, Y, Z. And so you don't take that me saying something is moral if and only if X, Y, Z. You don't think that's a semantic reduction, right? You think that's me giving you
I'm not saying
exclusively
I'm not saying I don't think
hold
it
on,
is a
hold on, hold on,
semantic
hold on,
reduction.
hold on, real quick.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, that's not you understanding that I'm trying to give you some sort of semantic reduction. That's all you gained from that information was metaphysical predicates, right?
No. I'm not holding the position that you did not give a semantic reduction, nor did you attempt to give a semantic reduction. I'm just saying that I'm skeptical towards you doing such. So even if I believe that you are in fact given a semantic reduction, I'm not sure if I'm justified in believing such, given the fact that after you gave that definition, you then proceeded to say that you're subjectivist, which really and truly is just a meta-ethical position, which captures the nature of morality and not the semantics of what the predicates of morality actually is. It was that specific response that came after the attempted definition you provided on the table, which gives me a reason to perhaps doubt whether you're in fact given a definition of what it means for something to be moral, or whether you're just given a metaphysical perspective of what moral actually is, or what the moral concepts actually are represented in the world.
Okay, so earlier I kind of gave some sort of analytic argument as to why I was actually informing you on the metaphysics of morality under my view, and it started by me saying, well, if
I know
you
you are
understand,
informing me of the
hold on, hold on,
metaphysics. I
hold on,
agree with
hold on,
that
hold
part,
on.
just to be clear about
I
it.
need you to like, I need you to not interrupt. Okay, so
Okay,
when I
cool.
tell you, okay, cool. So when I tell you something is moral, and I proceeded to give this analytic argument by telling you, okay, when I give semantic reduction of something, and I give you semantic, conditions for it, and you understand the metaphysical natures of those semantic conditions, and that's gonna imply that you understand the metaphysical predicates about the given object. And so I first made that inference, and the conclusion I was trying to get at is that I actually did inform you on the metaphysical predicates about my view of morality. And so first, I
Do
started
you think
by
in disagreeing with the
telling you,
latter?
hold on, just hold on. So first, I
Mm-hmm.
started by telling you I actually did give you a semantic reduction. And now, if it's the case that you understand the metaphysical nature of the semantic conditions, then that would just imply that you actually do have information about the metaphysical predicates. And your response, correct me if I'm wrong, but your response was that I actually didn't give you a semantic reduction, but I was only informing you of metaphysical predicates, and that was actually a contention that you had with the argument that I gave for the tautological, just
Uh-huh.
equation.
Yeah, so I was just saying, I was never making the affirmative claim. I don't know how you got that interpretation that it is the case you're not giving a semantic reduction, or were you attempting to give a semantic reduction. What I said specifically was that it appears as if what you're doing is not giving me a semantic reduction, but giving me just a mere metaphysical perspective of such, which then brought me towards asking questions for clarification with respects to whether you were in fact given a semantical your semantical perspective of these predicates, or you're just giving me both the semantical and the metaphysical perspective, or it's just the metaphysical perspective or stance you have as it corresponds to these moral concepts. So it's not making that claim first and foremost. Another thing I need to clarify is simply that as it pertains to the definition you've given, if you want to say that's the definition of what you mean for something to be moral, right, then I'm not even sure if we're having the same conversation here, because I'm not the type of person who just grant that specific definition.
Okay, so in your response, you say that you didn't make an
Mhm.
affirmative claim, but you just made an appearance claim. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that appearance was that I was just informing you about metaphysical predicates, or you're just not sure if I was giving a semantic reduction, correct?
It's the latter.
Okay, so you're not sure that I was giving, a semantic reduction, and I just want to be clear. Were you under the impression that I informed you about metaphysical predicates?
Of course.
Okay, cool. So you're not okay. So I informed you about metaphysical predicates, and you were unsure if I gave you semantic reduction. So I'm pretty sure I was under that impression that you were holding to that, and then that's
Well, the
later
recording
when I
is here, so we
responded.
can all
Hold
check
on,
out the
hold
recording.
on, hold on. And then that's later when I responded to get clarification. And
Okay.
I guess you can take this as sarcasm the way that I asked it, but now I'll just be more clear when I use a sarcastic tone. You don't think that when I say X is moral if and only if X has XYZ. That's not a symmetric reduction under your view,
You
because
did
I
not
think
say
it's
if and
very
only yet.
obvious. Hold on, I didn't say if and only if, but I said it. I can just give
So why
some
would you
sort of
be
condition.
referencing something which did not happen in the
Yeah, I
conversation?
can just clarify. Yeah, it's okay. I can clarify.
Okay.
But like when I
Clarify
told you
again,
that
man.
something is moral when it does this, or I forget if I said when or if, but it really doesn't matter. So when I tell you
Yeah, you
something is
definitely forgot.
moral when it's conducive, okay, what do you think I said?
I'm saying you definitely forgot.
Okay, good job. Anyway, so when I say something is moral if it's conducive towards an end, typically cognitive, you don't think that's a semantic reduction, right? Or you're skeptical of whether that's a semantic reduction, right?
I've already clarified my position here.
Okay, well, I think that's kind of insane. I feel like when I tell someone,
It's
here,
insane that I've clarified my position on
something is a
numerous
bicycle.
occasions, and
Hold on.
you're still
Just
asking me
hold
the
on.
same question.
Just hold
Mhm.
on. So I think if someone asked me or somebody asked me what a bicycle is, I said, well, I clarify some other terms. And then I say, okay, well, something is a bicycle when it has two wheels. I feel like that's pretty obviously a semantic reduction. So now I'll just clarify for you even
Do you think
more.
the
I
same
was giving
context
it.
is?
Hold
Do
on.
you think this is
Just
the
hold on.
same
Just hold
context?
on. I know. Just
Do
hold
you
on.
think the
Just hold on.
bicycle context crosses
Just
over
hold
to this
on.
context?
I know. Interrupting is
Okay,
hard. Just hold on. Just hold on for a second.
sure.
So now I'm just going to clarify for you that when I say something is moral when it does X, Y, Z, that's me giving semantic conditions for something to be categorized as moral.
Yeah, so in the bicycle context that they've given, yes, in that specific case, it would be pretty obvious that the person is given a mere definition of what a bicycle is. But in this case, if you're going to give what moral is, you're going to say moral is that which conduces to a specific end, and then proceed to say randomly, arbitrarily, that you're subjectivist, which is a metaphysical view on the ethical predicates that are being talked about, then it would give me reason to either believe, number one, you're given both a definitional and a metaphysical perspective of what the thing actually is, or number two, you're given just a metaphysical perspective of what that thing actually is, and is not actually capturing the essence of the question that I originally asked you previously. So I don't see why you thought the bicycle context or that bicycle example even landed to begin with. That's number one. Number two, do you want to just get on with the conversation, just progress into the actual substance, onto the morality talks or something?
Yeah, sure. Even though, like, I would like to respond, but if you really want to move on that badly, sure.
I don't want to move on that badly, but it just seems uninteresting. But if you want to respond, go for it, man.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say that the syntax structure, the way that I, proceeded to describe my kind of morality seemed pretty obvious, and then I also gave an explanation as to why I was giving like a semantic reduction because I further specified that well because I'm like a pretty strong like subjectivist about morality, and so this is kind of like my semantics of it. I think that was pretty obvious, but if you want to move on, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So just to be clear on this, you think that your definition of the moral predicate is non-proprietary?
Is what someone like drove a motorcycle right by your house.
Yeah, I'm outside currently. I was asking if it is non-proprietary.
He's like revving it up right now. He like drove by and then came back from.
No, you didn't. You didn't like ride by or drove by already. Like he was still there. I was asking, is it non-proprietary?
I'm gonna guess you're trying to say non-proprietary, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay, well, proprietary just means like abstraining from like the majority of a set. I don't think the set we're looking at really thinks about morality, so I can get an account as to like why most people probably mean this. If you want, I
Mm-hmm.
can give like some sort of explanatory power if you want. Was that a yes? Oh my god.
Oh, give me a sec. I was just talking about the definition given, like, I guess it could be both in cases of like conventional circumstances, or it could say layman conversation, or even in non-layman conversation, which involves um, ethical philosopher's perspective of what the term generally means, right? What is like the generally agreed upon definition in the philosophical domain. And I was asking if you believe your definition maps onto this general definition, which is reflected by the philosophical domain.
I think the philosophical domain kind of has a lot of um, sort of biases, namely realist biases. But I'm not trying to say all they're biased against my position. So I'm just going to disagree that obviously that's kind of like begging the question. But um, I think that my definition kind of correlates to like when most people mean when they're not thinking about philosophy, and I think it's pretty useful to talk about when we're talking about ethics.
Wait, hold on. So just to be clear, when you're saying that veganism, or sorry, killing animals is immoral, and you're saying that is a true proposition, right? What the kind of truth are you going under here? Or saying it relates to some objective facts about the world?
Um, I'm saying that it is the case. Like, if you want to get into theories of truth, I'm not like super interested. I'd rather talk about veganism. But if you really, really want to that badly, I guess we can.
Yes, you're just like a deflationist. So like, what's the background criteria just coherent the sentence with for it to be true?
If it is the case, like I can like whatever
No,
theory
that's
of
not the
truth.
background criteria, right?
Hold on, just to be clear. Just whatever criteria of truth you have, I'm fine with granting it because I literally don't care.
Okay, so hold on. Just to be clear, on this you're saying that you're subjectivist and you believe that like the that which is moral is just that which is conducive to an end, right? So what end really is are you talking?
Cognitive preferences. I think that helps the most with normative language. Like,
So
I could
whose
just say
preference is
that
specific?
whose preferences specifically. I don't think it has to be specific.
So you're saying it's conducive to preferences, basically. Now, are
Yeah.
you making like a general assertion, or are you saying it's conducive to all preferences?
No, it's not like it's not a totality. Like it's not like universal, like utility. That's not what I'm saying.
not saying it's conducive to all preferences. You're just saying it's conducive to some preferences, correct?
Yeah, to some agents' preferences, then it would be moral for them. And then we can talk about when we talk about
Under
normativity.
that view, wouldn't it be the case that it is moral to kill animals?
Then we can talk about our collectives, seeing as it's conducive towards conflict resolution, because conflict is bad, conflict resolution is good. Conflict resolution necessitates some sort of consideration of other agents' preferences.
Wait, so hold on there a second. Before getting to the conflict resolution part, are you holding the position that it is the case that for something to be moral, a sufficient condition for something to be moral is for it to be conducive to some preferences?
Yeah,
Given your definition.
there's some cognitive preference that gives good mental qualia.
Do you hold the position that the people who eat animals or kill animals, that action is not conducive to their preferences?
I think it is conducive towards their preferences, but I think they also have preferences that they should consider. That they also have that it would be
That they
detrimental to.
should consider.
Yeah, given other preferences.
Yeah, and the should word there, what's your meaning of that?
Just normative.
It's normative, so it's just like an action guiding concept, really.
Yeah, I think it's action guiding. Like, I think once you reflect on your principles, you're actually like, oh shit.
And what grounds these action guiding concepts?
What?
And what grounds these action guiding concepts? Are you like a reasons internalist or externalist?
Well, I just explained like where it comes from, so it's gonna be the cognitive preferences.
No, you explain what it means for something to be moral, right? You never clarify that by morally talking about normative concepts.
Yeah, well, that's like where the argument comes from. Like for my definition of moral is that I think it's like almost like pretty identical to just normative language.
Okay, so you're using normativity when you're saying that something is moral, like we ought to do X. Because the reason as to why I'm skeptical towards you using this language is because originally, when I asked you if your claim is identical to you saying that we ought not to kill animals, you verbatim said no, and this is on the recording. So I was like, hold on a second, are you using morality in conjunct with like some normativity concept, or are you using it in a way where it excludes normativity, right?
Yeah, so I'll just clarify. So earlier when you asked me like whether I think that you ought not eat animals, I said no because all I was going to
I
substantiate is
said
that you
kill and eat, by the way.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, yeah. I'll not eat animals or kill animals. I said no, because there could be other considerations that you have that might outweigh it, which is compatible with
Uh-huh.
having a multiplicity of values. And so with a
Mhm.
multiplicity of cognitive values, you get a multiplicity of like obligations. And then we're just gonna like try to talk about which one we typically should act towards and which one's gonna be most action guiding.
Okay, which one's going to be most action guiding? Is that what he said?
Yeah, that's what I said.
So you think that there's like a magnitude line which like evaluates like action guiding concepts? Like you think something can be more action guided than something else, right?
Yeah, of course. That's why we get like to conflict resolution and we're thinking about, okay, what value should I do given this conflict?
Okay, so what do you think the conflict is in this case, and what the conflict resolution would be under your perspective?
Okay, yeah, the conflict here is that a large population of people are eating animals. There's a much smaller population of people that are not okay with this, and that population, and maybe not the whole population, but at least I'm going to make the argument that for the people that are eating the animals, I feel like they actually have value towards the animals that they're contradicting. Um, because I usually do evaluation of like reasons why it's wrong to kill humans, and it ends up reducing down to some sort of cognitive preference for another agent. And so now all I have to do is like establish, okay, well, if that's sufficient for you to have a preference not to do it, I'm just going to
Uh-huh.
apply that like that predicate to these animals and say, okay, well, these animals meet your sufficient conditions that you applied to humans not to eat them. It's also true for all these other animals. And so by
Hmm.
your own logic, the reason why you don't kill humans and the reason why you don't rape humans, there's also reason for you not to kill and rape like these animals.
Okay, so I'm just going to lay out my interpretation of what you just said, and correct me if I'm wrong in this. So you interpret the conflict to be that there are a large number of people eating animals, right, which would be like the non-vegans, and there are a large number of people who does not like this. They have an issue with this. These would be the vegans, specifically. And you think that another thing, which is going to be a core, you could say, motivating factor for believing in that, in the idea that there is a conflict as it pertains to the vegans that matter, is the fact that the non-vegans have contradictory values. So there's something else that they have towards human beings per se, which would be the type of thing which would justify the idea that killing animals is moral, and you're taking that to be some reason to not do this action, correct? That's going to be the
Right.
conflict, and the conflict resolution would be your position, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So how do you argue that they have contradictory values? What's going to be the argument for that?
It's going to be like some sort of process where I evaluate why a given agent thinks it's wrong to terminate a human. And then oftentimes the answer reduces to some sort of predicate about the human that is true of animals, which just meets that sufficient condition. And then if you just want me to, I feel like I just repeated myself, which I
Okay,
apologize for.
so just to be
Right.
clear, the premise for
Hold
the
on, just
conclusion,
hold on. If you want me to
you're not done?
specify what the
Oh, I thought
property
you're
is,
not done.
I was not done. I was not done. But like
Okay, cool.
when I don't stop talking,
Uh-huh.
that's me continuing to talk. Okay. So if you
Okay.
want me to specify that predicate, I can if you want to, but just let me know.
What is the predicate?
The predicate is cognitive values.
Okay, cool. So to be clear, do you think that like when they're saying that this is going to be the thing that they value, so far as the thing that justifies killing animals, in contrast with our side, the thing which justifies killing animals, do you think that they're being correct about what is true of the axiology?
Correct. Sorry, you're gonna have to like repeat that.
Do you think that they're being correct when they're telling you that the cognition, the higher order cognition, is going to be the thing which is what makes them be justified in believing that killing animals is moral? Do you think they're accurately reflecting their axiology?
Sorry, did you say higher order cognition?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't say anything about that, so I don't know where that came
I
from.
assume when you're talking about cognition in this case, and you're saying that they appeal to cognition, they're talking about the distinction or the higher degree of, like, you could say, the distinction in intelligence between animals and human beings, which massively favors human beings.
Where
That's
did
what I
you get
just.
that idea from? I'm confused
That's
where
not
you
what you're
got that
saying.
from. What I said
I
that
got that
they
from what you're saying. If you want to clarify, that's not what you're
what
saying. That's
I
fine.
said what I said that they're pointing to is something that is sufficient, like it gives sufficient reason to
Uh
not
huh.
kill animals. So the predicate would
Okay,
have to
maybe
be.
you just poorly communicated your point. That's
So
fine.
I'm
Okay,
not.
so what you're
So
saying
just
is
to be clear.
simply, wait,
So
hold on.
when I
Yeah,
don't
relax. You're spazzing.
Apollo, when I don't stop talking and I continue to talk, that means I'm not done talking. I feel
Oh,
like that was
sorry,
pretty big.
I didn't realize you're done talking because you paused, but that's fine. So if
Yeah,
you want to
that's fine.
say
If
that,
I
so just
so
to be
I'll just
clear, just
continue.
go ahead and
So
continue your sentence.
I don't
Uh-huh.
understand how you got that because when I said that the predicate is also true of animals, I'm not making the argument that animals have higher cognition because higher would be indexed to a data set. And if I just applied the entire data set of having like the same level of cognition, there wouldn't be higher cognition, it would just be cognition.
I don't know why you thought I heard that part, but just to be clear, I heard the part where you said that cognition is the type of thing that they value, which is going to be reasons for them believing that it is morally justified to kill an animal. Sorry.
No, I didn't say that they tried to give reason why it's justified to kill an animal. I just said that they have
Hold on.
reasons that justify, not killing a human or restricting the
So wait,
termination.
hold on, hold on. Did you not say that the type of thing which they value, which they attempt to lay out to justify the morality of killing animals, is the type of thing which could be applied to the vegan's position, which would make it the case that they have an inconsistent axiological system?
That's not the case because I didn't even try to explain why they justify killing animals. I never gave that account.
Wait, hold on. So when you're saying that they appealed to cognition, that was not for the sake of giving you reasons as to why they are non-vegan.
Nope.
So what was it reason for that?
It was a reason for why they think it's wrong to kill and rape humans.
Reasons for why this killing rape humans. Okay, got you. So hold on. So you're saying that basically the thing that they appeal to for justifying the wrongs of killing humans and raping humans is the type of thing which would be applicable in the case of like the veganism talk. Right?
Yeah, it would be applicable to non-humans.
Do
And
you
so
think
they
that's the only reason they have on the table as to why it would be wrong to kill and rape humans?
Yeah, I think that's like the only coherent reason. I think other people try to like give reasons that end up not being true of all humans.
So are you making the claim that all non-vegans have an inconsistent axiological system?
Yeah. Like, I guess I could
Hmm.
think of ones that just wouldn't be like intuitive. Like if they just like hyper specified molecular structure of like Homo sapiens, then yeah. But I think that has some reductives on it. So I can say they're being consistent, that they're being
Mhm.
consistently like they're just consistently dying on hills left and right, and then I can just give those hills.
They're consistently dying on what?
Dying on hills.
Okay, so all you're saying here is that there are some non-vegans, right, who has an inconsistent value system, which would point in favor of veganism for the sake of resolving that contradictory axiological system, one could say, right? So you're saying that, in other words, their preferences would actually be more justified in alignment with being a vegan than to be a non-vegan. Do you think this is a sufficient condition for it being the case that non-veganism is immoral?
Yeah,
Why would there be a sufficient condition for that claim?
because it's by immoral, I just mean that it's detrimental towards your cognitive values. And once we establish that you have cognitive values to be vegan, then the negation of
By
that
that, by
is
immoral, you'd
detrimental.
mean something which is not conducive to our preferences. Because by immoral, what you mean is something which is conducive to our preferences.
What do you think I said just now?
I just told you what he said, so obviously I just told you what I think you said. Literally a
No,
second ago.
I
What are you
think,
talking about?
hold on. When I said that, when I
Uh-huh.
gave an account of immoral, and then you repeated what I said, are you trying to just like repeat what I said in different words? Or are you trying to correct
No.
me?
I just don't think that what you said necessarily ties in what I said.
Ties into it. Okay, so what I said just now, you're saying that's inconsistent with what I've been saying earlier,
I'm
right?
not saying it's inconsistent. I'm saying it is not something which necessarily ties in with what I said.
Okay, well, I
That's
think
the
it
second
doesn't
time we're going to
necessarily.
repeat my claim. Pardon?
Yeah, I think it does necessarily imply what you said.
Maybe under your usage of the language, sure. So I just want to make it clear that all you mean by immoral is just something which is not conducive to some preferences.
Yeah, I think detriment is necessarily not conducive.
So how do you know that it is the case that there are not
Detriment
some
is
preferences out
necessarily not
there? Hold on there a second. Just relax.
my fault.
I was going to say, how do you know it is not the case that there are some preferences out there that the veganism position is not conducive to, without there being any contradiction to that preference set?
Oh, I already counted for that. I said there could be, but they just die on hills.
They're just dying hills. So wait, hold on a second. So you don't have, you could say, adequate evidence for proving that this is the case.
What is the case?
That it is the case that veganism position is not conducive to some preferences.
I think for those people that don't die on insane hills, I think they have inconsistent, preferences. And for the people that, uh, do have consistent preferences, they don't have inconsistent preferences. I think they just have like
Well,
these insane standards that die on crazy hills and hypotheticals.
do you have a probabilistic inference which supports the claim that they would die in hills in the case where they're to hold to a consistent set of preferences which do not align with veganism?
Yeah, I guess I could give it like a probabilistic. I could just go like
Yeah,
case to case.
what's the inference?
Case by case. So I was just saying
Mhm.
I could go case by case examples for things that are consistent that don't lead to a vegan conclusion, and we'll just evaluate one. So if you want to give me an
Wait,
example,
hold on. That's not what
as
I'm
a
asking.
person, hold on,
I'm not
just
asking for.
as a person,
You have
just
nothing for case scenarios or
hold on.
examples of there being a consistent set of preferences which would lead to an unintuitive conclusion. I'm asking for there being a probabilistic inference showing that in most cases, or more than likely, if someone has a consistent set of preferences, it would be the case that they would die in hills. That
No,
would have
not
some
just
unintuitive.
wait, no, not just a consistent set of preferences. It's a consistent set of preferences that is not inclusive of a vegan conclusion.
No shit, obviously. I didn't even
Okay,
specify that, did I?
I just wanted to specify. Okay.
Yeah, the context of this part of the conversation, right, is simply the consistent preferences a non-vegan has, which is not in alignment with the veganism. We both know this, so there's no need to say no and then just clarify the obvious fucking
Well, I just
fact.
want to be clear
So,
because it seems like you're not
uh-huh.
very clear on a lot of things that I say.
Oh, really? Says the guy who had to like trip over himself. So, oh, not even have to, but he was tripping over himself so many times in the conversation. So that's
Trip over
fine. So I
yourself
just
like
wanted to
half
be
the
clear.
time.
This.
Well, actually, I'm
Oh,
not even going to
you're
say that.
cross
I'm going to say
talking now.
half the
You're
time.
cross talking now. You're interrupting. You're
Sorry,
spazzing
I
out. So
thought I was on mute.
calm down.
My
Yeah.
fault, bro.
So I don't know why you're acting so mentally handicapped right now. So I was just going to say that in this scenario, right, do you have any evidence, any probabilistic inference which supports the claim that in most case scenarios, it would be the case that someone who is a non-vegan, who has a consistent set of preferences, which is not in alignment with veganism, I feel as if I need to clarify that part, that will most likely lead to an unintuitive moralistic conclusion.
Yeah, I have induction.
You have what?
Induction? I have an inductive
Okay,
argument.
so what's the inductive case? Is it based off anecdotes? Because my anecdotes do not converge to
Yep.
that.
100%. It's 100% based off of anecdotes, and if you want to provide me with
Uh-huh.
your own anecdote, that would be fine. And this is the part of conversation where you tried to give me a trait. This is actually like throughout the course of 36 minutes, we
Uh-huh.
finally
Take
got
your
to
time.
name the trait. We finally
Mm-hmm.
got to the point where we actually named the trait.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I'm like,
So, anyways, just to be
I'm like
clear,
edging
this
right.
yeah,
Sorry,
it was because you
sorry,
yeah, it was
sorry. If I
because
can
you
say this
poorly
right now, I'm
communicated
actually
your
like edging right
definition
now.
and so on,
I'm
and
like
that's
on the
fine.
edge of
But
my
yeah,
seat,
the
bro.
main
You
reason
named it.
as to why we took further 6 minutes to engage in substance is because the prior 35 minutes was just you just poorly communicating your perspective, and that's fine. So I just want to be clear in this, right? When you're saying that your evidence is based off anecdotes, right? Do you hold the position that I do not have different anecdotes, which is just as much as the amount of cases that you are aware of, or are you holding the position that it is less than the amount of cases that you have in your perspective?
Oh my gosh. Like I'm so close. I'm like edging to the point where you nut. Like
I don't
when you
need the
name the trait.
posture, just in the
Hold on.
response to my
I'm
argument
so close.
request.
Hold on. I'm so close
Mhm.
to nutting. When you finally name the trait, I swear I'm about to
Yeah, the
bust.
unnecessary posture.
No, like I feel like we're getting really close to you giving me the trait. So do you have a trait that is true of humans that if
Is
true of animals?
there an answer to my question?
Oh, sorry, my fault. I was just rambling. I was getting too excited there.
Of
So
course you're
can you
rambling.
repeat?
You
Uh,
have been rambling. So
I
just
know.
respond to my
I
question.
know. I'm so. It's a habit of mine. I'm
Yeah,
so
it's in
sorry.
character for Lucario to ramble in the
It's in
conversation. So
character. That's what I'm. That's what
that
I'm
was just a
saying, bro.
no-brainer, right?
Exactly.
Right, guys? So I just wanted to respond to my question.
I
If you
can't
remember
remember.
what my question actually was.
I got distracted so bad.
Yeah, you got distracted by your own thoughts. Yeah, okay, skip
My
this.
own
So
pauses,
could
bro.
you
My
just
own
respond to my
jibber
question?
jabber distracted me.
Are you done? So could you just respond to my
I what? What the fuck are you?
stop
Sorry,
stuttering,
I
just
was
respond to my
trolling, but
question.
hold on. I was stuttering because how do you think I'm gonna
Wait,
answer
hold
your
on.
question?
So you're
If I
trolling.
told
Okay.
you, hold
This is
on,
an
hold on,
excuse for your bad performance here?
hold on, just hold on. When I tell you, I actually don't remember your question because
Mm-hmm.
I was trolling. I
Of
was in the
course you
middle
don't.
of
You haven't
trolling,
been remembering a
and then
lot
I
of
say
things in this
I don't
conversation.
remember the question.
Yeah, I'm just going to
Why would you
repeat
just
back to you what the
autistically
question
ask?
was. Shh, shh, shh,
Yeah,
shh.
thank
Calm
you.
down, dog.
Oh my gosh.
Relax, honey. I'm just going to repeat back to you what the question is. Okay. So the question is simply, I don't know how I forgot this in like less than like 10 seconds, but that's fine. So the question is simply, is it the case that you hold to the position that your anecdotal evidence is going to be the type of thing which is greater in quantity than my anecdotal evidence, potentially speaking?
Are you talking about the like numerical value?
Yeah, because your claim is going to be, in this case, fundamentally justified based off an inductive case, which you said is going to be anecdotes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make claims about the numerical value, but I can make claims about the explanatory power.
Okay, explanatory power. Hmm.
Yeah, explaining like the induction. So, when we have
Wait, what
induction,
do you think explanatory power?
so like
I
when you
just
have
want
a
to be clear
theory
if you're
that,
misusing the term or not, right? I just want to be clear in that specifically.
yeah, when I talk about explanatory power, I'm usually talking about like
Uh-huh.
a theory's predictions, and then when those predictions end up corresponding to
Theory
reality,
restrictions?
or yeah, I'm expecting.
No. So firstly, explanatory power is not something which is inclusive of predictions necessarily. Predictions is going to be something which is conducive to the explanatory power of a theory, but it is not the explanatory power itself, right? So I don't know why
Yeah,
you define the explanatory power in virtue of predictions. You can have a theory which do not have any predictions, which has greater explanatory power than the counter hypotheses that are available.
yeah. I was just giving an example. Like I can just keep giving examples of
That was
things
not
that
an
have.
example. That was a definition, by the way.
Yeah, well, I was
An
just giving.
example would be you picking out a specific theory which has a more explanatory power than another theory which offers predictions.
And no, I was just giving you an example. Just calm down.
You're not giving an example, but just calm down.
What kind of anime laugh was that? What the fuck?
Okay, I'm glad you know
You-
it's an anime laugh. So, anyways, are we gonna get back to the subject?
Yeah, just ask a question.
Okay, so I successfully confirmed that you're misusing the word explanatory power, and that's fine. But that's irrelevant, anyways. I mean, sympathy. So I just want to say that it is the case that you believe that the inductive case you have is going to be the type of thing which has more, or which has a stronger long-term frequency in comparison to my inductive case potentially. If I was to
Wait,
have an inductive.
you have an inductor case. Oh, okay. Well, we're actually really close. This is the part where you give me your inductor case. You
Are
give
you
me the
going
step.
to actually
Oh,
respond to my
oh
question?
my god. Oh my god.
Is
So
this the
just
part where
or,
you
or
continuously dodge
just
my
this is the
questions
part.
as you
Okay, this is the
realize
part.
that the basis of your
Oh
position
my
is
god.
so feeble and weak to the point where
Yeah,
you're
sure.
having like this
Okay.
development?
Just give your shitty question. I'll answer it. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So I'm asking the question one more time because it may be the case you forgot the question already like the last time. Okay, so the question is simply, is it the case that you hold to the position that your inductive case, right, has a stronger long-term frequency than my inductive case if I was to have one.
Okay, yeah. So is this part where like I actually answer the question and you don't interrupt me?
I'm waiting for the answer. It's
Okay,
yes
yeah.
or no.
So I was about. I mean, last time I was about to say no, but I didn't even get to that part because you interrupted
You
me.
didn't say no, actually. You started the sentence without
I
saying no.
I didn't say that I started the sentence by saying no. I said I was about to say no before you interrupted me.
You're about to say no. Oh,
But
really? It's so justified for me to believe that after just rammed on
yeah,
for like over two
because I'll just
sentences, you're
repeat.
about to say
I'll just
no, right,
repeat
guys?
what I was
Okay,
saying.
cool.
I'll just repeat what I was saying. We're gonna hold our hands and we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to the end of my sentence. Okay? Does that sound good?
How many minutes is it going to take for it to get to the end of your sentence? 10 minutes? 20 minutes?
No, I was thinking about 13 or 15.
13 or 15 minutes. Okay, cool.
Okay, yeah. So I was just saying that. Oh, this is the actual part where you actually like identify the parts of your inductor case and you identify the members and you actually name the trait. Because presumably you're going to give some sort of trait that doesn't lead to an insane reductio, and you're going to use that as your inductive argument. Now, I'm just going to say earlier I said that I didn't make claims on the numerical value, but I can make claims about the inductor case. So I can only make claims from my data set, and my data set can explain. Okay, well,
Okay,
in
so
this
what are the claims from your
event,
data set?
the claims are like whenever you name the trait of like Homo sapien exclusiveness, then you get like fucking Superman reductio, where like if Superman came down, we could just like rape him if he didn't have
Wait,
any
hold
powers.
on. You're forgetting the thing I'm questioning. Holy shit. I'm not asking for case scenarios. I'm not asking for like hypotheticals. Whereas here's this consistent set of values, and that leads to like some like really unintuitive conclusion. I'm asking for case scenarios which demonstrates that you have actually interacted with people, which has these sort of like consistent set of values, which do in fact lead to some sort of moralistically unintuitive conclusion.
Oh, if you're just asking for like case examples of where I talked to somebody, yeah, I can give you a case example where I talked to someone and then they gave me an example of like consistent value,
Yeah.
but it
So
led
what's the
to
long-term frequency for that?
yeah, so one time I went to my job and a customer asked me, "Hey, do you know where the peanut butter is?" And my response was, "Hey, do you have a trait that you can separate justifying like terminating animals that is, not true of like terminating humans, or like you can actually name the trait between them?" And the response, you'll never guess what the response was. Oh my god, it was so bad. They said Homo sapien DNA. I was like, okay, well, I'm sure you can like cut me off at this point if you want. I'm just jabbering. They were like, okay, yeah, Homo sapien DNA, and I was like, okay, well, what if Superman came down who didn't have Homo sapien DNA? It's okay to rape them, and they were like, yeah, sure. I thought, oh my god, that's an insane reductio, and so they actually got mad at me and reported to my manager, and my manager asked me why I didn't just point to them the peanut butter. And you know what my response to my manager was? I was like, "Yo, Marco, like if you're not vegan, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And so okay, well, what is true of killing an animal that if true of killing a human, both would be like justified? And you'll never guess what his response was. Do you want to guess what his response was?
What was his response?
His response was the fact that we're smart. And so I was like, oh my god. Do you think that like you like anime debaters? Do you think like Infinity smart? I'll just have to show you this guy named Infinity. And then I showed him a video. And he was like, oh my god, my principles are like negated because of this like YouTube video. And do you want me to keep going?
Wait, okay, that's fine. So I'm just gonna say this simply. So I would say that I've had interactions with people where they did not give out the trait, but they in fact give like a sufficient response to the entity. So like, I've had conversations with a couple of non-vegans, in certain philosophy servers, and they share like the same response that I do, really, which is just that like, they have like this sort of like value, which is against animals insofar as it would be justified to kill animals. Now, when it comes to linguistically articulating what that trait actually is, they compare the trait to like a box, for example, like a thing, like an unknown object within a box. It's like they don't know what that object actually is, but they know there is an object which is in the box, and they're justified to believe in such. And they would say that they're justified in believing that they do in fact have a trait, despite the inability to linguistically articulate such, as a result of their intuitions, which they take to be good evidence for there being a trait. And these people share like the same sort of like response that I do, at least in some like servers I've had talks with, I've had talks in, like in PNR server, for example. And I would like to say that, do you believe that them mentioning this is a good reason to believe they have a consistent set of values, which may or may not lead to some sort of unintuitive conclusions? Or do you believe that their statements are the type of things which we should not trust, really?
No, because I think you can still generate a reductio from the skepticism. So,
Hold on.
are you familiar
So
with?
before we get back to that part, I just want to clarify one thing, and then you can continue your point. Like, what do you take values to be? Do you think values are like the like some sort of like preferences or desires? What do you think values?
I think we can have like cognitive values, and then I think we can also have like biological values that are like good for our like organism and shit. But I don't really care about those.
Okay, so what about cognitive values, right? What do you think those?
Cognitive value is something that we like act to gain or keep, like on a cognitive level, like something that gives us like a good mental qualia. And no, I like if you ask me to like give an argument for qualia, I'm just gonna like fucking give that up. I'm just gonna like pretend I didn't say that.
Wait, sorry, I was not listening to you. I was talking to a Muslim brother. What's up?
I was saying that something that gives us good mental qualia, and if you ask me for an argument that qualia exists, I'm gonna give that up, and I'm just gonna say that
No,
I
I'm
don't
not
know.
going to give an argument for why that exists. I'm not that guy. Continue.
But yeah, something that just gives us good like mental states.
Okay, something which just gives us good mental states. So it's kind of like positive valences, really.
Yeah, and then we can also have like
Okay, so what reason do you have for believe that it is not justified that they specifically, those are the people that I was talking with, have a consistent set of cognitive values which do not lead to some sort of moralistically unintuitive conclusion?
okay, so for those people, yeah, I was gonna ask you if you're familiar with the trade or value process.
The traits are a validated process like the anti-T.
Yeah, well, I mean, you start off with NTT, and then when people say that, there's some
Yeah, like
when
the
people just
equalization trait process, like you just equalize the trait like between like the animals and human beings to generate like some reductio, correct?
yeah, and then you can go on like both sides of whatever like data points that they put on the kind of scale.
Whether if it is like intelligence or some, well, human beings are more intelligent, and they can just always appeal to like the mentally disabled people, or the biological case scenario where it's like a kryptonite person or whatever, someone from Krypton, like I know those case scenarios.
Well, those are like reductios, but more so it's a response to people who leave it as a variable. So like you kind of have a range of possible values. That's essentially what the
Okay.
box is. Like, it's
Do you think the
after this
range of
point.
possible values are infinite or finite?
It kind of depends on like the trait. Like probably like infinite if we want to be like very pedantic and like it's the same where I would say like there's like an
Or
infinite
indefinite?
like units between me and the door because I could just keep dividing the units over and over. But I think
Mhm.
it's still finite in a typical
I'm
sense.
talking infinite to the less pedantic sense, right? Or let's just like substitute the word infinite with, is there a definite number of values or is there an indefinite number of values?
I think there's a definite number of values,
I think there's
or
a
no,
definite
maybe
number.
not even values, but like possible values or like traits that we could possibly ascribe value to.
Okay, cool. So traits that we could possibly ascribe values. Okay, so like you're talking about the number of values or the number of traits?
Number of traits, and then we could like possibly value this one. We could possibly value one next to it.
And what are the distinguishing conditions between a trait and a value?
The distinguishing conditions between it, like, well, a trait is just like something descriptive, but I think values are like
Hmm.
more prescriptive.
I think values are what?
Values are more prescriptive.
Okay, hold on. Prescriptive in what sense? Like it is action guided?
Yeah, it's like normative.
Okay, so it is okay. So are saying it is normative insofar as it is a motivating reason for doing something, or is it a different type of reason for doing something?
So the way that I defined value earlier is something
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately just gives us good mental qualia. And then a
Mm-hmm.
synthetic claim that I also hold to is that we can only ever act towards things that give us good mental qualia, or yeah, things that we perceive to give us good mental qualia.
We can only. So what's the synthetic claim? I didn't hear what he said ago.
The synthetic claim is that we can only ever act towards things that give us good mental qualia, or like what we perceive to give us good mental
We
qualia.
can only ever what? You might either bugged out or mispronounced the word.
We
Act.
can
Act.
only act, ACT,
Okay.
act,
Okay. Act. Okay. Cool. We can only ever act. Continue.
towards things that we perceive or
Mm-hmm.
believe will give us good mental qualia.
Okay. So okay. So you're saying that our actions are kind of like, and this is like a synthetic claim, not like an analytic claim. So you're saying that, like,
Yeah,
given like your general experiences, we act towards things which gives us good mental quality.
yeah.
Do you think there are things which do not give us good mental quality, which have better reasons to do it than things which do give us good mental quality?
I mean, I just wouldn't know what the reason would be indexed to.
Well, even if you don't know the nature of the reasons, do you believe that there are such reasons?
I just wouldn't use the term reason then if I don't know the nature.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying reasons are analytically intertwined with like cognitive sets, or like you could say cognitive set of preferences or values?
Maybe not like cognitive, but definitely the normative kind of formula that I like to lay out.
Yeah, okay. Reasons, I agree that. I agree that reasons are, you could say, analytically intertwined with normativity, right? Because that's just how we use the term philosophy, right? So I agree with that specific statement. Now let's move on to the other part. Is it the case that you believe that it is not the case that reasons outside of a cognitive value set, so
Sorry, did you finish?
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you like repeat that? It sounded like you cut out.
Oh yeah. I was asking you, do you believe that there are reasons outside of the set of cognitive values which exist?
Yeah, actually, I do think that. I just don't think we could ever act towards them.
Okay, hold on. And act towards okay, so you don't think we can act towards them? Are you saying it is metaphysically impossible for this to occur?
Yeah, it's like nomologically impossible for us to act towards them.
It's logically impossible, you're saying?
No, nomologically.
Nomologically impossible? So by nomologically impossible, I presume that you're trying to index the modal scope to like some law of nature. You think there's some law
Yeah,
of nature compromised by acting towards, you could say, non-cognitive type reasons?
yeah, that's just what I believe. Because like,
What do you think
uh,
these laws of nature actually are?
I think the laws
They're
of nature are. I don't know. You want me to give a name of those natures?
Yeah, we like specific. Okay, so like the laws of nature is going to be inclusive of like the laws that are stipulated within physics, biology, and chemistry. If you're going to be saying that there's a nomological contradiction, then presumably you believe that there is one of these members within the set which are compromised in virtue of asserting the claim or the proposition that we have reasons outside of, you could say, cognitive values that we act towards, right? So what would be that law of nature that is contradicted in virtue of doing that or asserting that statement, I should say?
I guess you could kind of categorize it under the physics, but it's more sort of like neurology. Like,
Neurology.
yeah, for all of our,
Neurological laws. Well, what are the neurological laws you believe is contradict?
I don't think they're neurological laws. I'm just saying that for our neurological structure, this is how like our neurons, just
Okay.
this is how they operate. And so for us to contradict the way that they operate, yeah, that would be like a logical
Okay.
contradiction.
Okay. So I'm just going to break things down a bit further. So you're saying the neurons in our brain, you could say, operate in a way which is what specifically? Fill in the blanks.
The neurons in our brain um, can only ever act towards things that give the neurons and possibly some other qualia outside the neurons. But if not, then just the neurons, some sort of good mental states.
So the neurons can only act in a way which is what specifically?
Something conducive towards this ultimate end of like getting this good tingly feeling.
Okay. So I thought we are talking about actions, right, and how we act towards something. Presumably, you can have an action without the existence of neurons. We can act towards something without there being like some neuron.
Well, I don't think I can act without my neurons.
Is this a claim that you believe is justifiably true, like in the sense where is there some contradiction entailed from you acting towards something without there being any?
I could just make like a basic argument, like for all entities that get their neurons blown out, they can't act anymore.
Okay, so you're saying that they can't act anymore. And by can't, what do you mean there?
If they got their neurons blown out,
Do you mean they are not acting or that they can't act
they cannot act.
and
They don't.
cannot? What do
They
you mean
lack
there?
the ability.
No, I'm not asking like what does it mean in the sense where is what's like the semantical foundation for that. I'm asking like what system of modality are you employing?
Just a nomological system of modality where they don't have the potential to. And if it's the case that you don't have the potential to do something, then you can't do it.
Hold on, did you pick out like a nomological contradiction previously as to establish why it would be the case that that would be nomologically impossible? That I'm talking about acting towards something without it being something which we're cognitively inclined towards?
I didn't give a P and not P, but I did say that you could consider the neuron's functions under physics.
Yeah, I'm not asking like for a P and not P, which would be a logical contradiction. I'm asking like, okay, given this law of nature, which would be expressed in a proposition, how is it the case that this proposition, which is expressive of a law of nature that exists, is the type of thing which is contradicted if we were to assert the claim that we can act towards something without being cognitively inclined towards it?
Well, I don't think I can give like a law of nature, or there's even like a name for the law of nature, but that's why I
Mhm.
specified it's like a synthetic thing. Where like, okay, well,
Okay.
for all entities that can act with neurons, when is the case that they lose their neurons, they no longer have the ability to act. And I just have
Okay.
really, 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 really strong inductive reasons to believe that.
Oh,
To the point
sorry.
where
The
I
strong.
haven't. Yeah.
I wasn't speaking. Sorry, I was actually bugged out. So like I was gonna say that the strong inductive case you're talking about is really questionable because it has a baked-in presupposition that the entities which do not have neurons do not have the ability to act after they have lost their neurons, right? That's like the questionable like presupposition, or you could say um, premise that is baked in within that specific statement, right? So like
Yeah.
I mean, when I asked you or when I questioned this presupposition earlier on, your response is simply that it is the case that it is nomonologically impossible. And then when I ask you, well, how is it nomonologically impossible? You then circle back to saying that there's like some sort of contradictions, there's some nomonological contradiction, to which you then
Well,
admittedly say that there's no law of nature you're able to pick out like the name of currently, which would be contradicted in
well,
virtue
well,
of
I don't know
this
if I
specific
ever said that.
phenomenon.
Well, I don't know if I ever said that I could give a contradiction though. But like I said, I could like get some sort of like physics and like maybe not laws of physics, not like
I think
thermodynamics,
all
but like
facts of physics are laws of nature.
yeah, I'd assume that.
Hold on. So by a law of nature, um, what is your account of like you could say nomological law? What's your kind of laws here? I should say, like how are
Like,
you
I'm
cashing
not
out
gonna lie.
laws?
Like, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of just like understand nomological modality as just all synthetic claims.
All synthetically,
Yeah, like the way like this world is.
the way the world is. So like if I say that like my friend is at the mall, that's a law of nature under your view.
Mm. Oh, wait, sorry. When you said fact of physics, I thought you were talking about like, you know,
You said all
like laws.
synthetic claims.
Oh, ultimately, oh, yeah. Like, if it's the case that your friend is at the mall, then yeah, it's impossible for your friend to not be at the mall.
Okay, so you're saying that like it is the case that well, all you're just saying there is simply that if P is true, then not P cannot be true. So you're just dismissing the possibility of contradictions, logical contradictions. That's
That's not
fine,
all I'm
but
saying. I'm
that's not really
expressing.
explaining to me. Well, hold on, that's not really explaining to me if you believe that the statement "my friend is at the mall," that true statement is a law of nature, because that's not the intuition we have in philosophy as it pertains to what the concept of laws of nature actually is.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying on that. I actually can see that. But more so
You
the
disagree
way
with
that
it, or you agree with it?
no, I agree with what you said. I'll consider on that.
Okay,
But
continue.
yeah, the way that, but would you agree that a nomonological law, or something that violates nomonological modality would be like pigs flying? Like, do you agree that violates nomonological modality?
Yeah, I would say so. I think that like the sort of like reasons we have for believing in this is going to be justified in virtue of like the necessary facts of certain theories, which offers like predictions to a you could say to a really great degree to the point where it is at the point it is kind of like undeniable, one could say, right? So I think that there's some undeniability essence of certain facts of physics which makes us deem these facts to be laws of nature, but I don't believe this is something which is applicable in all cases, right? There are certain facts of physics which are not totally undeniable, like certain facts of quantum mechanics, which are still being researched and is still being reviewed and is still being questioned, one could say. And if we're to operate under your specific reasoning of what a law of nature is, one ought to say that all only have to like be committed to the view that like literally every proposition about physics is a law of nature, which would just trivialize the concept entirely, right?
Um, yeah, that's why.
Hmm.
I mean, I feel like there's kind of vagueness, which is why I conceded that point. But I'm
Hmm.
just like really confused on how you have the ability to say that it's a nomonological law that pigs can't fly. Um, I guess at this point I'll just ask you like which law does it violate for pigs to fly? Which law does it violate?
Pigs of the fly depends on which condition you're talking. Like, what's the condition? Like, it
Well,
depends on like the
earlier,
surrounding environmental conditions.
no, like surrounding environments aren't going to be a law, right?
No, I'm saying that like the environmental conditions can determine whether a law is applicable in a specific case scenario, right? So let's say we have like a law which applies to like one specific domain, and you then just talk about some hypothetical case scenario which is open to more than one domains, right? It would not be
Yeah,
the
you can
case
just
that
like
that law is
yeah, you can
necessarily
just like
applicable in
choose.
that case.
Yeah, that's fine. You can just like choose the environment and then just tell me which law does pigs flying violate.
Okay, so I could say that like pigs flying. Okay, so like for example, the condition on Earth, where it's presumably whereas we have the same level of gravitational field energy, and pigs have X and Y amount of mass and so forth. I would say that the laws that are being violated there are the type of laws which pertains to the nature of gravity and how pigs are actually have a lower mass or they have lesser mass than like Earth, and objects with lesser mass are attracted to objects with larger mass or a huger degree of mass. So it would be the case that given that specific case, under normal conditions, that would be impossible given the nature of mass and the nature of gravity, and the consequence of how objects with mass and energy interact with each other, which is repeatedly confirmed and verified over and over to the point where there's this undeniability element that is developed within this theory or this claim or fact, one could say.
Yeah, but you understand that what you said isn't sufficient for pigs not being able to fly. Like I can just give examples of entities with a greater mass than pigs that still have the ability to fly, given gravity, of
Well,
course.
yeah, so I thought you were talking about like normal conditions, like how the pig is structured and so on. I agree that there are entities which are larger than pigs which can fly in the real world. However, I thought we were talking about the conditions where pigs don't have wings or they don't have the type of things which are able to propel them in the air. Like in the
Yeah, I
absence
was
of
just
that
asking.
specific
I was
thing,
just
it would be a
asking for a
contradiction.
law. I was just asking for a law that it violates the same way that you asked me.
Okay, so I've already explained the law, right? Under the normal conditions. Now, if
Is
you
there a
want
name?
to give case, pardon,
Is there a name for the law? I haven't heard of this law
is
before.
there a name for the law? Well, it's just going to be something which is established from the gravitational law of gravitation.
So something that established it from the gravitational law, but things that um are
Do
conform
you
to
agree
the
this is
gravitational.
established from gravitational law and how objects interact with each other in space-time?
Hold on. Oh, we didn't get there yet. So I don't know what you mean by like there's something that comes from the gravitational law, but are you saying that thing that comes from the gravitational law is a law itself?
Obviously not, because you're asking me what law does this proposition violate. You're not asking me whether this proposition about pigs not being able to fly is a law, right?
Okay, so it's not the gravitational law, and it's not the thing that comes from the gravitational law because that's not a law itself. So you didn't answer my question.
I did answer the question. You asked me what law does it compromise. I explained to you what the law actually is.
But okay, well, it's the name of the law.
I told you
What
the law
is
of
the law?
universal gravitation.
Wait, so it is like the law of universal gravitation, right?
I said that 2 times, yeah.
Okay, well, the law
Any more
doesn't.
questions?
It's not. Well, just because the law isn't like sufficient for something not being able to fly.
It is sufficient under that specific condition for that not being able to fly. Given the meteorological structure of a pig, the fact that the pig does not have the type of equipment which propels it into the air, and all of these stuff, and also the fact that the pig has lesser mass than the other, than for example Earth, which is the type of thing which attracts it to the center of the Earth, would make it the case that it is impossible, nomoologically speaking, of course, for the pig to not be able to fly.
Okay, yeah, and just to be clear, like if pigs did have wings, then that would violate some sort of law, right? Because again, we
No, it
can just
wouldn't.
like they
Because
wouldn't.
as I'm saying, the laws are context specific. So if you change the context of that specific case now we're talking about, it is no longer the case that this law would be applicable in that case. We're not saying the law applies to every single case scenario, even in cases of people, or sorry, objects which have wings. We're saying that given how that pig, the normal pig, is structured, biologically and meteorologically speaking, and given the conditions surrounding the proposition we're discussing here, and the law that exists or the law that is sure or that we believe to exist, it would be the case it is impossible. So I'm not making like a claim that it is universalizable. I'm saying it is a contextual fact.
Okay, and just to be clear, do you think that those conditions are synthetic or analytic?
I think the conditions,
Yeah.
What do you mean by if the conditions are synthetic or analytic? And what
Like,
specifically you're talking about?
well, I was just asking, like, the conditions that you're applying for to say that the pig doesn't fly, are those conditions,
Pig
like,
doesn't
could they
or
hold?
not?
Yeah, well, for the proposition that the pigs can't fly.
It's an analytic condition. So, like, given like what it means for me to say pigs cannot fly in that context, is just to say that it is nomonologically
Oh, I
impossible.
was asking,
And
no,
given,
I'm talking about the
hold on,
environment conditions, like the other environment conditions, like the condition that the pig doesn't have wings. Like, that seems synthetic, right?
if that's an analytic fact, no, it isn't. I'm not saying it's an
I
analytic
know,
condition.
I know,
Hmm.
and so I was just saying, okay, well, if it's
You
synthetic, then
know,
that's
but you're asking the questions. I'm answering that question, even if you know or
yeah.
not.
No, I was bringing it to light because I already knew the answer to that question. So I was just bringing it to
Okay.
light. So I can say that. Okay, so since
Uh-huh.
that there's conditions, that's basically what I did with like the neurology. Like I really think that this whole thing is like just basically a tangent. Like I don't think there's actually any substance. We strayed so far away from the actual like point of the proposition
Yeah,
that
but they
we
seem as
appreciate.
if, like you're not able to like I don't believe you're, or rather, you definitely convinced me as to why you're justified in believing that it is more than likely the case that we cannot act in this way, or we cannot act towards reasons, right, independently of cognitive inclination. That's what I'm really skeptical towards, right?
Okay, wait. Just to be clear, you deny that it's impossible, or we have strong reason to believe that it's impossible for someone to act out of accordance with
Yeah, I don't
something
see
that.
any, and I don't see any successful probabilistic inference in your end which justifies that claim.
Okay, well, I could just say that for all cases that an entity acts using neurology, and when they lose their neurology, they no longer have the ability to act. So all cases
But
that
that's
have been
just
able.
begging the question
Hold on.
because
That's all.
the consequent
Hold on,
there is
hold on.
assuming that it is
I didn't finish the
nomonological.
premise. Hold on.
Uh huh.
Just hold on. I didn't finish the premise. So for all cases that I've been able to evaluate, I can make an inductive case, like a really strong inductive case for that being the case. Now, do you have a single example where someone got their brains blown out? They have no
I'm saying your
any.
inductive case is question, but
Okay, go ahead and
I
explain
don't
how
need to
that.
offer an opposing inductive case because your inductive case doesn't even work. Because the consequent of the conditional claim you're making assumes that it is nomonologically impossible. The inductive case should not have either the antecedent or the consequent assuming the conclusion.
Sorry, you're gonna have to explain that one more time. My
Yeah,
internet's
so
quite
you're
slow.
saying that for all entities that have their neurons blown out, they do not have the ability to act towards specific actions or towards specific reasons, which are not cognitively which is not a part of like some sort of cognitive inclination, right? That's what you're saying. The
Okay,
consequent
yeah.
there, for you to judge, the consequent there is assuming that it is nomonologically impossible. What you'd have to do to show like an inductive case, and for one, I don't even see how inductive case is applicable here. But with that being said, you'd have to what you have to do to show that there's an inductive case, showing to justify the conclusion that it is more than likely the case that you would not be able to act towards, you could say, reasons which are not a part of your cognitive inclination set, is by showing all the cases of people not being able to do this independently of neurons existence. But then what do those cases be, and how do you justify that they are actually unable to do so simply because they're not doing so?
Okay, yeah. Are you just asking me to justify like why like brain dead people can't act?
No, I'm asking you to justify why people without neurons are not able to
Yeah,
act
like let's say
in most cases.
I blew out someone's neurons, and you're questioning me on whether they can act or not. Like my response, and like it's gonna be like, I really don't
Yeah,
care if
under
this.
the model scope you're going
Hold
under,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, hold on. I really don't care if this is like philosophically illiterate, but I'm just gonna look at they fucking can't like move. Like that's just unironically my response. And if you in order to like critique my position of veganism, you have to be skeptical. Well, I'm not sure if this person who got their brains blown out can act anymore. Then I'm just like, I think I'm fine with going to closing
I'll be
statements.
going under, yeah, it is just the case that when you're going to make these like really deeply philosophical claims about like the nature of reasons, the nature of how we act towards things, our reasons, like normativity and so forth, like when you make these like deep philosophical claims about normativity concept, and then when your opponent evaluates these claims and the nature of these claims, it then goes down to you not being able to justify that, but then you try to say, well, you're just being really deeply philosophical and use it as a criticism, and not criticism, one could say. It just seems kind of ironic to me, given the nature of the conversation and how you went on this kind of like reasons talk, which is deeply philosophical, just to then kind of like run away from the deeply philosophical criticisms to the layman idea or approach towards the conversation.
I really don't think that I really got like too deep into the like philosophical parts. But if you want to
Okay.
move, just like go to closing statements. You can. If you want
Okay.
to go first.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, given the responses that you have given
I'm
thus
sorry. I'm
far,
so sorry to cut you off. I'm
pardon?
really sorry to cut you off. But like, you did give your closing statement first last time. Do you want to go first this time, or do you want like the last word?
Well, I wasn't given a closing statement yet. We might have something else to cover, like who knows? Maybe the next response I give is going to motivate you into giving another response. So I'd just like to flesh out what I got to say first, and then we'll see if you have any more disagreements. So like I was just gonna say that given the reasons you've given this far in the conversation for what is the case, that I would say we cannot act towards reasons which are not a part of our preferences set. Walaikum assalam. Yeah, I was saying something to someone. Yes, which are not a part of our preferences set, right? It seems as if that is not a justified reason. Maybe you'd agree with this, like on the philosophical level, when you actually evaluate the arguments you have for that claim, it is not justified to believe in. With that being said, I want to be clear. So, like, you can just try to go back to the more, you could say, predominant feature of the conversation. And if it goes back to this philosophical part, then we'll just close this off, right? Because we've already covered this specific end of this conversation, right?
Yeah, but I really should go to bed soon because I have to go get up pretty early. But just try to make it quick.
Yeah, sure. So veganism is immoral, and all it just meant there is that it is not conducive to a set of preferences.
Did you just say veganism is immoral?
Not veganism is immoral, sorry. Anti-veganism is immoral. That's your position.
Yeah.
And you're saying all you mean by that is that veganism, or sorry, anti-veganism is not the type of position or action which is conducive to a set of preferences. And by
Yeah,
action, you're just talking about killing animals, really, right?
I think I should specify that it's detrimental.
But wait, hold on. Before you specify or clarify anything, you agreed that the concept of morality, which is normative based, is larger than just preferences, right?
No, like not really. Like I think it's
You said
preferences and
because you said that
hold
there
on.
can be reasons for actions which would be normative based, which you take to be identical to morality, which are not preferences based early on
No,
in the
no,
conversation.
no. I have an understanding of like a normative formula that I can apply reasons to, but I'm just not gonna unless they're cognitive. I'm just not gonna say that's moral.
You have a normative formula which you can apply to a reason. You think it's applicable to reasons. But continue.
But without like cognition, I'm not gonna say it's moral or something that I care
Okay,
about.
sure. Yeah, okay, so you agree that in principle it is
The principle it is what?
logically possible.
Logically possible. Like yeah, there's no
Yeah.
contradiction.
Yeah, so that means that the concept of morality, which you take to be identical, analytically speaking, to normativity.
No, no, no,
You
no,
correct me
no,
if
no.
I'm wrong. You
No,
don't take it to be analytic. Wait, hold on. You don't take it to be analytically identical to the concept, like
no,
action
because I
guided
think we have
concepts.
because I think we can have normative formulas that don't involve cognition. Like I think it can be normative for like a frog to like leap, but I just like wouldn't really care if it did.
Okay, you think it can be normative for a frog to leap, and you think that it is impossible for there to be any case scenario for it to be normative for a frog to leap, which is action guided but is not a sort of moral fact.
No, I think that is possible. Like I think like mosquitoes biting, like a mosquito flying from one tree to another. I think it could be normative, and by that I just mean it's conducive towards like the biological values that it has. But it like I don't think mosquitoes have any cognitive values, so I don't think like any
Okay.
moral action would be
hmm
there.
Okay, so you're saying that like it is okay. So I want to clarify this one more time, and you can say yes or no to this. Just want to be really clear. Yeah. So you're saying that, are you saying that it is impossible for there to be a moral fact independently of cognition?
It's impossible
Are you saying it's logically impossible?
by definition. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so so I just want to clarify that part. So yeah, it would be the case that you do not believe the concept of morality is larger than set of preferences, but you believe that it captures normativity which is not enclosed specifically to preferences, and that's fine. Okay, cool. So I don't think there's anything else to really go over here because I think we've already went over the preferences talk, and now I don't think
I did have
you're able to like.
like one more part of the
Sure.
conversation. Like, did you want to like try to give an offer the trait, or are you just gonna leave it at that box variable?
I don't think I'm able to linguistically articulate the trait currently, but I believe that there is a trait, and I believe I'm just in believing that there's a trait as a result of my intuitions that there is in fact a trait. So the inability to articulate or communicate what the trait actually is not evidence again in not being a trait or there not being a trait. In fact, there's evidence for there being a trait under my axiological system or my moral system, given the fact that I have the sort of intuitions which conforms to the belief that there is a trait.
Yeah, and then the response to that was like, you can establish like some sort of like barriers between where the trait could possibly be. Like you know that it happens before X and then after Y. But I think that there's still like kind of insane reductios between both of them as well.
Yeah, I think the insane reductios are applicable in some cases, but I do not believe there's any reason to believe that in most cases, or it is more than likely the case, that confronting a non-vegan would result in the sort of thing which results in insane reductios while holding to a consistent set of values, right? I don't think that's going to
Well,
be a justified belief.
I'm just saying
Hmm.
that you can look at the like domain between like where the trait could possibly be. You can render that domain as insane. Like I think that's fine. Or you can
Okay,
like
yes, and I agree. Yeah, yeah, you could say, yeah, of course, you could just like make like a whole bunch of possibility claims about like where the trait
no,
is.
but I just want
Um,
you to give a domain and let's evaluate whether it's insane or not.
the domain, like by domain, are you talking about like a specific context under which it would be morally justified or something else?
Yeah, look at the trait evaluative process scale, and then give me 2 data points on that scale, that sliding scale, but when humans like slowly gain traits of an animal, and then just give me the like 2 sets that constitute where the trait could possibly be
Are
in
you
between.
assuming that the trait is kind of like this specific line instead of like an area which cannot be, which you cannot like put like a hand on, really?
Yeah, I'm assuming it's a line. Like,
Okay, so what
uh,
if the trade was to be something like something which is identical, or you could say similar to the case of like the bald man paradox, right? Whereas we cannot like specifically tell like the gradients or like the specific part of that scale, whereas the amount of hairs he lost would result in him being bald and vice versa.
that's like completely fine and really trivial when we're talking about traits.
It's not trivial about truths, by the way. There are truths which are like this and there are truths which are not like this. So clearly it is not trivial, right?
Wait, but like a trait of like humans could be that they have like lack of hair, and like something true of animals is they have a lot of hair on them, and so through the trait evaluative process, we can just like remove one hair over and over and over again. That's like really trivial.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm really talking about here. I'm not just talking about the triviality of like the idea that a lack of hairs is going to be bald and like removing one and one hair is going to lead to like the baldness or leading to the conclusion that a specific person is bald. What I'm saying here is simply that in the case where you're asking someone, right, to like specifically point out that spot, whereas someone would be morally justified in doing X, kind of like how you ask someone to point out which at which specific point is it like justified in believing the person is bald by picking out hair after hair from the person. I believe that
No,
not only is
no,
a long and tedious pardon,
no. I just
is
want to
there
be clear. I'm not
misinterpretation?
asking.
Hmm.
I'm not asking for that trait. I'm just asking for the 2 traits that constitute the domain that the trait could possibly be in.
But I thought that I've already clarified the inability to linguistically articulate the contents of the trait, that
No,
being the more likely domains it is about, right?
no, you didn't clarify that. I understood you were unable to like clarify and linguistically articulate the
Hmm.
exact trait, but I was unaware that don't have the ability to linguistically articulate the actual box, as you put it, or like the domain where that trait could lie. Because like now I could just run the trait evaluator process and go trait by trait, and then maybe one day, no, well, sorry, not Monday,
Hmm.
but like maybe eventually we'll find unless this conversation takes days, which it seems like it might. But
So upon further, so upon further inspection, whereas I've just clarified that I'm agnostic or skeptical towards the type of boxes, as you'd like to put it,
okay, you're just
which these
like a
traits would
box.
be. Well, I mean that's what he said specifically, but if you did not say that, that's fine. But now that I've clarified the fact that I'm skeptical or agnostic towards like the domains that this trait would be about, right? And also I'm agnostic towards the type of contents, the specific contents that is baked in within this trait, right? What
Oh
would be your
my god.
next approach towards this response?
Sorry, I had this crazy realization. That actually reminds me, after my manager threatened to kick me out, they called the police, and then the policeman came and I asked him if he was vegan, and his response was like,
What?
there, yeah, the police officer, it's like shocking. The police officer was like, um, actually, there is a trait between humans and animals, and it's kind of like this box. And then I tried to ask him where that box was. He didn't answer, so he asked his partner. And then his partner came up and he was like, well, I actually don't know where that box is. And so every time I ask someone, look, what is the trait true of animals that if true of humans? It'd be just like kill them both. The best answer I've gotten so far from the police officer and his boss, and
Hmm.
actually, it's you're just reminding me a lot of it. Was this? Well, there's just like this box, and I don't know.
Okay. And do you think that them not knowing the box is good reason to believe that they don't know that there is a box?
No, I think they can believe there's a box, but if you have no fucking clue where it starts, then I guess that gives like some sort of reason that you don't know that
Hmm.
there is a box. But if you're just saying there's a box, I can take your word for it. But you just have no fucking clue
Okay.
what it is.
Okay, cool. And instead of just really just taking my word for it, I mean, it's just like the type of reason that I have for believing such, which is just like the predisposed intuitions, right? Which I think is shared by a lot of people, not just me, right? Like a lot of people hold the intuition that it is morally justified to eat animals, and you could say that a lot of people are not able to linguistically articulate the trait, even in the case you've given, based off your personal anecdote, they're not able to articulate the trait, and even based on my personal anecdotes, right? So we could say that like all this points towards is just the idea that the epistemology of morality is just far more convoluted than like the epistemology of other state of affairs, like let's say sciences or like some other like economical case scenarios or legal case scenarios, right?
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I was not listening to the last part.
That's fine.
But I actually do have a trait that I think I could actually. I think someone like ran name the trait on me. I think I could answer it pretty good. I'll get you not trait, but probably after closing statements.
Okay, cool. So like you can give your closing statements first. Go for it.
Okay. So throughout the course of the conversation, it started off by me giving an account of morality to very early on clarify um a possible crux that usually leads a lot of conversations into this like ambiguity and just confusion. And so early on, I clarified the semantic thesis, to which I believe my opponent just was not very clear on, and it took a lot of time and effort for them to get clear on. I feel like what I feel like is a very basic understanding of morality. As in, by the basic, I just mean it's not very common, but by basic, I just mean it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. Then throughout the course of the conversation, I was able to give some sort of account as to why my understanding of morality is kind of correlative to vegan ethics. And then we further went on to talk about certain traits. After we got into the correlation between my ethics and their, vegan ethics, we got into traits that would be separating a human and their justification for not killing them, and then an animal and their justification for not, for literally killing them. And then once we get to that part, that's where I usually get excited. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe now we can actually get to, uh, the thing that actually separates these two concepts, because there's something true of one. If true, the other one, X would be true of that both of them. X being that it's morally justified to kill them, and you know, we also talked about I guess like actions, and then I feel like a common pattern in this conversation is just that my opponent kept trying to bring it into meta ethics or metaphysics and even modality at some point, as opposed to just giving me a trait that is true of the animal, that is true of the humans. And then once we finally got through all the kind of just mumbo jumbo, as I would put it, once we finally got to actually the actual core of the conversation, ended up just being more vagueness within the conversation, to the point where first there was a box where we actually don't know where the trade is, and then all of a sudden we actually don't know where the box is every time I tried to run the trade evaluator process on it. And so I was deeply unsatisfied with my opponent's responses to my vegan argument. But I guess that's the end of my closing statement.
Okay. Some closing statement would be pretty simple. I think as the conversation kicked off with some semantic pieces about what it means for something to be moral. I think my opponent clearly was unable to successfully or efficiently communicate what he means by moral at the beginning parts of the conversation, which took like let's say 35 minutes. But after we actually got over that part of the discourse and we moved on to like what it means for something to be moral, which he said a sufficient condition for something to be immoral is to be conducive to at least some set of preferences. I then really said that like, well, is it the case that like you'd agree that non-vegans are doing an action which is conducive to their preferences? Well, he responded to by saying that well he agrees with this, but at the same time he believes that there's a contradiction in their set of preferences or value system insofar as they have another set of preferences which goes against that preference towards eating animals or killing animals, one could say. And as a result of this, he was going based off his anecdotes of this being the case, and he's trying to extend that onto me, presumably speaking. But then I responded by giving my own personal anecdotes of talkers being in our server, which they have these set of preferences towards killing animals and eating animals. They don't see anything wrong with this, right? And it is not the case that there's any apparent contradiction in their moralistic system, right? So, really and truly, he was not able to demonstrate as to why I'm unjustified and morally unjustified in being a anti-vegan or being the type of person who believes that killing animals is immoral. I don't think that not giving a trait is the same as dodging the content of the conversation, because I do not believe that it is essential for veganism talks for there to be some sort of trait listing. I don't think that's an essential part of the conversation of veganism. It's an essential part of the entity dialogue tree, but the entity dialogue tree itself is not essential for veganism talks and the moralistic analysis of veganism. Now, with that being said, I mean, he ends this off by saying he's unsatisfied in my responses, but unsatisfaction doesn't result in lack of justification, or rather, in this case, it is not motivated by lack of justification. And I'm certain that my opponent cannot confidently say that he won this debate because he was unable to really show, number one, why there is a high degree of probability of a non-vegan to be unjustified in their position given the contradiction, and number two, that there is in fact a contradiction in my moral system. And he was really and truly not able to show why it is less likely than not that there is no trait which would justify killing animals under my moralistic climate in comparison to his moralistic climate, what he could say. So that's my conclusion. He was unable to justify that we ought to be vegans under his idea of morality, which I think is really uncommon, but it's whatever. I still operated under it and was able to adapt regardless. So that's my conclusion.